Every year, we are talking about a gender pay gap like it's somebody else's problem to solve, like we're waiting for a policy or some sort of law to see us, a corporation to finally decide we're worth the same. But I want to show you something that nobody else in the conversation is actually talking about. And it's the fastest way for women to close that pay gap. And it's to stop waiting for permission to charge what we're worth. And most of us are not doing that. I know because I work with female coaches and consultants every single day. And I have been for the last 6.5 years who are undercharging and over delivering and wondering why the number feels like pain. This video is going to be about why that happens and exactly how to fix that. I'm Rebecca. I help female coaches and consultants install something that I call profit architecture. It's the infrastructure that takes you from $20,000 a month to $100,000 a month in actual profit, baby. Not revenue, profit. I've produced 5 female millionaires. A sixth is probably going to birth in the next couple of days. I have helped clients oversee 55 million in AUM, and I spent 7.5 years in finance breaking records in rooms where I was most always the only woman. I have lived this conversation from every angle, so stay with me. We have been taught to think that the gender pay gap is something that happens to us, and that statistics are real. Women earn roughly 82 cents, excuse me, on the dollar that every man earns. So for a woman of color, that number drops further. And the research is documented. The disparity isn't something that is a myth or is hypothetical. It is real. But here's what the conversation almost never includes. A significant portion of that gap, especially for women who own businesses, who consult, who coach, who offer services that are extraordinary. It's not just systemic; it's also self-imposed. And I say this not to blame anybody because I say it because the systemic part, the part rooted in the biases that we have in institutional structures and decades of societal perspectives, and being told that our work is worth less has gotten into our heads. It's gotten into our pricing. It's gotten into the ways that we answer people when somebody asks what we charge, and we have internalized the gap. And so we're going to talk about that part, the internal part that we cannot actually, close it. So that's what this video is actually about. It's not about a policy conversation. It's a personal one. So here's my context. I grew up without any financial stability. I entered finance with no network. I was actually living out of my car. I didn't have referrals. I didn't have a safety net. I literally opened a phone book and started with the A's. I became one of one of the office's top producers and ended up breaking every single record that existed for over 65 years in a room full of men who had every structural advantage that I didn't. I was even threatened by a variety of men because of the production that I was doing, but I didn't wait for equity. I wasn't going to be in this place of being received, and I did it by refusing to accept the price that somebody else had decided that I was worth. And that decision to charge for the work that is actually worth it, regardless of the room expecting it to be a certain way, is the most powerful financial act a woman can take. And it is available for you right now. So I want to make this really concrete because this isn't a motivational video. This is a strategy video. I'm going to show you exactly where the gap lives inside of your business and exactly what to do with it because I am on a mission to create 50 female millionaires. If you are a coach or consultant, shameless plug here, pop into the bottom of this chat, and in the comments, there is a book a call link. If you are in a place where you have a ceiling in your consulting or coaching business, I would love to chat with you about how to get into the next realm. I love making women money, and I am literally on a mission to do that. I wake up with it, I feel it in my skin, and I can't wait to wake up. So, there are 5 specific places where women are systematically undervaluing themselves in business. And I've watched all 5 play out in real time across hundreds of clients. And I want you to see yourself in at least one of these because awareness is the beginning of the fix. So, the most obvious place is the one with the most immediate financial impact, and it's your pricing. Study after study shows that women price their services lower than men, offering equivalent and or inferior results. That is the actual study language. Not because women are less confident. It's because we've been conditioned from a societal perspective to anticipate pushback. And when we ask for what we're worth, there should be like a way that we adjust that to please people because we should share, we should be kind, we should include everybody. And we price to avoid that conversation before it even happens. So let me show you what this actually costs. Um, a female coach charging 3,000 for a program where she should be charging 7,000 is not just losing 4,000 per client. She is losing 4,000 multiplied by every client that she signs this year. But at 20 clients, that's about 80,000 left on the table in a single year. That's not a pay gap imposed by a corporation. That's a pay gap that she built into her own pricing and just has a blind spot around. And for the deeply uncomfortable truth, the male coach in the same niche with equivalent or less than results is charging oftentimes 7,000, not because he's better, but because he asked for it. The fix isn't complicated here, it's just uncomfortable. And so when you raise the price, not someday, but not when you feel ready, not after the next certification, not after the next testimonial, not after the next revenue milestone, right now, on the next person who actually inquires about it, right now. Because I know that the objection is actually forming right now in your head. But what if they say no? Good. We're going to talk about that because the answer to that question isn't the difference. Well, it is the difference between closing the gap and perpetuating it, right? So when a prospect pushes back on your price and asks for a discount, a payment plan that doesn't make financial sense, or a trial period, or to talk with a previous client in some capacity, what do? Most women accommodate, not because we're weak, but because we we've been rewarded our entire lives for being flexible and inclusive and agreeable or easy to work with. And the social cost of holding firm feels higher than the financial cost of discounting. And I want you to really like let that sink in for a second. Here, perhaps it sinks in through actual math of accommodation. Let me take you through this. Every time you discount your price, you don't just lose revenue. You signal to the market, it's a vote, and to yourself that that original price was a bluff. You train your clients to negotiate and you attract more clients that actually lead with price sensitivity instead of value orientation. Whereas the men in our industry are not discounting at the same rate. Research on negotiation consistently shows that men hold their prices more often and the market just adjusts to that expectation. So let's normalize ourselves saying, my price is X. I do have a payment plan if that's helpful. Here are the terms. That's what I've got. Full stop, no apology, no shifting, no elaboration, no adjustment. The rule decides that you just deliver it. So every time you hold that line, you're not just protecting your revenue, you're actively participating in closing the pay gap because you are proving one transaction at a time that women's work holds its value. And that is the way that we begin to vote on that. Now, here's the quieter version of undercharging. In some ways, it's actually more expensive. It's called scope creep. And a lot of women do it more often than men do it, significantly more actually. And it's an extra call here and there because the person seems stuck and you want to help. It's a resource sent outside of the program because you wanted to help. It's a boundary that begins to soften because the relationship feels so important to me, Rebecca. It's an email answered on Sunday evening because you genuinely care, but you labor to actually make that happen. None of this feels like undercharging. As a matter of fact, it actually feels like generosity, like really good service, like being the kind of coach that you would have wanted. But here's what it actually is, it's actually unpaid labor. It's actually being a servant to the ways that you are speaking and embodying your your level of delivery. And added on top of that is that the price is probably already too low. And so beyond the financial cost, the emotional and the energetic cost of this pattern is what burns out most women in business, and they call it heart. They call it, well, this is what I show up for. This is what I'm all about. And the fix isn't to necessarily care less. The fix is just to build a container that lets you care fully in the capacity that you are meant to. I had a financial advisor the other day call me up, and she was saying how she was meeting with a client, and the client kept on saying repeatedly, I know you're not my relationship coach. I know you're not my relationship counselor, because she was bringing her into conversations that she just genuinely can't help with. And so when you build something within a defined scope and it stops there, your offer has defined deliverable. You deliver it extraordinarily well. And that is the job, dare I say it, because anything that goes beyond that scope is either a new offer with a new price, or it's a gift that you're consciously choosing to give. And it's not a default, and it's not an exception. Generosity is a value, but an infinite unpaid availability isn't a business. And it's definitely not a business model that works. I want to pause here and say something that kind of grounds us, because I don't want this video to feel like a list of things that you're doing wrong either. It's not that. Every single person and every single pattern I have seen are completely rational responses to an irrational system. Genuinely, we learned these behaviors because we are adaptive, and they protected you at some point, but they're costing you more now. And you get to change them, because we get to change the ways that other women in the future are treated by the ways that we take up space right now. So here's where we get a little bit more structural. And this one is one that's subtle enough that most women never see it. And it's your positioning. The way that you describe what you do, who you serve, and what the outcome actually is directly determines what the market decides that you're worth. Now, women in the consulting space consistently use language that centers on the emotional experience of their work. Like, I help women feel more confident, or I support coaches in finding their voice, or I guide entrepreneurs through their next chapter. And men in the same space use language that centers on financial outcome. I help coaches build to 50K a month. I install systems that scale to seven figures. I build infrastructure that consistently creates revenue. Now, both may deliver the same result, but the market prices the secondary category significantly higher, because the market pays for outcomes, and it pays most for outcomes that it can measure. So this is not about abandoning the emotional truth of your work. It's about translating it into a language that the market actually rewards. So I help women feel more confident becomes I help female coaches, or I help female consultants charge what they're worth and build businesses that fund the life that they actually want. Same work, different price ceiling. Your positioning is your price ceiling, but we get to actually raise the roof on that. So raise the language, and the number is going to follow. Next, and this is the last place that the gap lives, and it's the hardest one to talk about. It's the most important. The belief is underneath everything. So the pricing decision, every negotiation, every moment of scope creep, every softened positioning statement, underneath of it all is a belief that you are worth and what you're allowed to ask for. And for most women, especially women who grew up without financial stability, were explicitly or implicitly told that ambition was unfeminine. Women who watched the women before them work twice as hard for half as much. And that belief is fractured. I know this personally. I grew up with nothing, not metaphorically, the kind of nothing where the question is not what you want, it's whether or not there'll be enough. And even after I had the data and the results and the testimonials and the proof, there was still this version of me where I had this like fractured belief trying to talk me into charging less, to asking for less, and expecting less, most of all. The work of actually closing that pay gap is both external and internal at the same time. we have to fix the pricing and we have to advocate for the belief that just we deserve the deliverance that we are creating, not from like an affirmation standpoint, but from an evidentiary support perspective, with data, with the decision made repeatedly in real transactions and real money where your work holds its value. And every time you hold your price, you're writing new evidence. Every time you close a client with the number that you said, you're building trust with yourself. Every time you refuse the discount, for what you've built. You're doing something far bigger than making money. You're changing what you believe that you're worth. And that over time scales across thousands and thousands of women in business. It's not just scaling your business, it's about scaling the understanding of this idea of a gap. And here's the thing I really want you to sit with. If every female consultant raise their prices by 30% tomorrow, the market would adjust. It absolutely would. If every woman in this space held their price in negotiations, the expectation of discounting would completely erode. And so, if we collectively position our work in the language of outcomes, the ceiling will rise for all of us, but it is held by all of us. And so, this pay gap is a systematic problem and it requires a systematic solution. Policy, legislation, institutional accountability. Really? I mean, yes, that work matters, but it's not going to be done anytime soon. And we can't wait for the system to value us or validate the value of us because the most radical financial act that is available to women in business right now today is that we charge what our work is worth, not someday, not when you feel like it's ready, right now. And that's not just good business, that's a participation in something so much bigger than an individual number. So every woman who builds a profitable business, truly profitable, not just revenue generating, makes it easier for the next woman to ask for more. This is the army that we need to create. We are building the evidence. We're shifting this expectation and creating a world where the next generation of women don't have to fight for the price that was always theirs in the first place, and you know it. And this is actually what profit architecture is for. I want to close with something really practical because inspiration without like actual infrastructure doesn't pay anyone's bills. So here are 4 things that I want you to do this week, not someday, but like this week, literally this week. Start closing the gap in your own business, girl. Audit your price, look at what you're charging right now, and Google 3 male coaches or consultants in your niche. Compare and adjust accordingly. Write your no discount script, 3 sentences, practice it out loud until it actually feels less terrifying. I know it's going to feel terrifying, but it's going to feel less terrifying over time. When you get to see these outcomes, it creates such a powerful rewrite. Number 3, rewrite your positioning and outcome language. 1 sentence. Do what your clients have. What do your clients actually have after working with you that they didn't have before in measurable terms? Calculate your real profit margins. Really understand that revenue minus cost is profit. And if it's under 40%, you don't have a marketing problem. You just have a pricing and infrastructure problem. And now you know. So these 4 things can create a understanding. Now they're not going to close the systematic pay gap, but they're definitely going to close yours. And right now, that's the most powerful place to start. So if you're a female coach or consultant that's currently at maybe 15 to 30K a month, doing really good work, getting really good results, and still wondering why the money doesn't really feel like it matches, there's a link in that description to book a call. I would love to take a look at your actual numbers, your pricing, your margin, your positioning, your client quality, and we're going to show you exactly where the gap is inside of your business and how to close it. Now, the difference with our calls is that we don't, we actually set you up with a business advisor who also owns a business who evaluates where you are and where you'd really like to be. If this landed, hit a like, drop a comment. Maybe there's 1 thing that you're changing this week. I read every single post and I really like to hear about it. So share this with a woman in business who maybe needs to hear it because we need to create this army, girl. Let's do this.